What gets you up in the morning?
Sounds always tricky when I hear it on the show because I think about like whether you mean like literally or whether it's like kind of like why I'm driven. I don't know. Do you have a preference about how I answer that?
I like the literal one. Like
Okay.
your eyes pop open.
Yeah.
Why do you stay there or not?
I mean, I would say that the main reason that I actually get out of bed is usually because my son wakes up and makes like little BB noises all morning, and then I have to actually like get him ready for the day.
Mm-hmm. So it seems like offspring is an automatic reason to live, because this is the second one, and whenever I hear it, I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
The figurative one's not important if you have a kid.
Yeah.
Your life is very
Just
literal.
Like, I have to get up now. I
Yeah.
have no option. Yeah.
What gets you angry?
I think probably what bothers me most about stuff is like injustices, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, you know, this guy gets 5 years in prison for the same crime as this lady or something, and things like that. That really bothers me. Yeah, or when, you know, bad people get good things. Stuff like that really bothers me, but, you know, dealing with it.
What do you still hope to achieve?
I think I'd really like to win something, like win a competition.
Oh, neat. For your handicraft.
Yeah, or or even like just something in the field would be nice. Like even if it's just some kind of achievement in the field, whether it's necessarily like specifically about a violin or not. You know, I try to do a lot of work in my field, and it'd be nice to feel like I've contributed somehow.
You're listening to Artist with Brian. I'm Brian, here with
Julia Felix.
Julia is a violin and viola maker. And there's a French word for that.
Yeah, luthier.
Luthier.
Yeah.
And it means instrument maker.
Yeah, like specifically stringed instruments.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you were saying viola and violin makers call them, like, to name out the instruments specifically?
Yeah, we usually just call ourselves violin makers a lot of the time.
Okay.
But luthier is kind of like a nice blanket term that covers, you know, restorers as well, and repairers. And it also covers, you know, guitar makers, lute makers, which is where that word comes from. And basically any kind of stringed instrument. Yeah.
Season 3 of Artists with Brian is brought to you by howtoplaypoker.video. Have you heard this ad before?
I have.
Wish you were better at poker?
I do, actually. I'm terrible at
Do
poker.
you get embarrassed at holiday occasions when you're playing with families and friends?
Yes, actually.
Oh, really? Actually, you might benefit. Learn winning strategies for free. Visit howtoplaypoker.video today. And please rate this podcast 5 stars in Apple Podcasts. Leave a written review. The most recent written review at the time of the 50th rating wins a $50 iTunes gift card sent via email. Right now, I think we're at 29. So there's some work to be done. Go have some fun, get involved, leave a note for me as you review. Julia, you went to school specifically to make instruments in Boston, but I looked that school up and it has a broader appeal. It's for all woodwork.
It's not specific to woodworking. It's a trade school.
Okay.
And it's actually the oldest trade school in the country. They started in the 1800s. But they do a lot of different things there. The programs have changed over time a little bit. But they offer violin making. They offer furniture making, and they have a very good furniture making program. They also do carpentry, preservation carpentry, locksmithing, jewelry making. I feel like I'm missing something, but yeah, a bunch of different trades.
Mm-hmm.
So
is that like the typical pattern? Is it required if you want to make violins to have gone to trade school?
You don't have to. I think it speeds up the process quite a bit. A lot of times, people who have graduated from school are on par with people who've been apprenticing for like 10 years or something, So it can cut some of that time down because you're focusing on it very specifically. You're there, the teacher's there to show you how to make something. Whereas if you're apprenticing or learning on your own or something, you kind of have to work with what you're given, so it might take some time to figure out certain parts of it. But yeah, I mean, I think going to school is an ideal way to start if you can.
In this particular field?
Yeah.
Are you coming at violin making more as a lover of stringed instruments or a lover of woodwork, and this is just the most challenging area possible?
That's an interesting question, actually. I think I really like music, and I really like making things and building things. And when I was in college, I took a lot of art and I took woodworking, and I felt really good about woodworking. So when I discovered instrument making as an option, it seemed like a nice kind of combination of a bunch of different things that I was interested in. I do really love woodworking, and I like fine detail work, and violin making specifically has a lot of very critical people in the field, and we're all very particular about our work, and that really helps me kind of like stay focused, because I'm like that too. I like to just do the best job I can always do. So it's nice to be in an industry where that's appreciated, I guess.
So you're the first violin maker I've ever met, and possibly a lot of our listeners. How rare is it that you're just doing it? You graduated recently, so you're a few years in. Mm-hmm. So not your measure of success, but just that you're active. Does that put you in like how many active luthiers are there?
You mean like as in how many?
You said there's like a critical group. Yeah. Sounds like a small community.
It's a smaller group of people for sure. I think there are a lot more instrument makers than people realize. Which isn't to say there's a ton of us, but there's probably a couple in every town,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to make a living at it just doing making. And that's something that I end up talking about a lot in some of the groups that I'm in that, other violin makers bring up and stuff. Because, you have to be able to make the instruments and then get them into the hands of players. And sometimes that takes a lot of time, and you have to have some kind of income in the meantime. So it can be really difficult for people to only do making. A lot of times they end up taking on repair work or restoration work or something in the meantime. And I know that what I did was I got out of school and I really wanted to do making, so I decided I was just going to focus on that. But most people seem to benefit from going and working in a shop for a while until they kind of get on their feet, and then they can focus more on making after that.
Okay, I see. And shop is all repair.
Yeah, repair or restoration.
Restoration.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, wow, 1,000 questions went through my mind while I was listening to you. I mean, like, so what is the business for you then? If you want to be a maker, mm-hmm. Are you able to, in Santa Fe, know all your customers, handshake deals, deliver in person, and survive off making violins and viola here? Is that part of why you came back home?
Well, it's a little trickier than that. In some places, there are some areas where you can definitely live off of the people in your area. I know like a really good maker up in Canada, Laura Wallace. She has a lot of people come to her from like a nearby big city to just commission instruments, because it's like a lot cheaper to get them from her. She's on like the Sunshine Coast. And so, you can commission it from somebody who's like in the big city, or you can, find her and she's like giving people really nice instruments for like a much lower price because she lives somewhere less expensive. And she can actually kind of make a living from that. She also has her own shop too. And if you know a lot of musicians, a lot of times you have connections. You can just keep selling instruments to people. And some people are just really friendly and able to make connections on their own. For me and a lot of other people, it's easier to just sell things out of shops. And shops all over the country, you can kind of just make connections with shop owners and send your instruments to them, and they'll take care of finding the right people for your instruments.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you play stringed instruments right now?
I wish I had more time to practice. I do play violin a little bit. I'm pretty bad at this point.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
But-
I did want to know how good you are, because dovetails into this question is, so you're buying a violin for yourself, or you need a violin. You're going to get better. You're going to decide to start practicing 20 hours a week. Do you make one for yourself, or do you go looking for one?
Like if I specifically wanted to do that, I would probably just use one of the ones that I have.
That you already made?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do that sometimes, ones that I kind of feel like this isn't like as nice as I would have liked it to be. I'll just hold on to it and play it myself for a while.
Nice. Yeah. In what ways is it falling short? What makes a violin not nice?
Mostly it's like aesthetic things that players don't usually actually care about very much.
So not sound.
Yeah. No.
Interesting.
If it doesn't sound good, there are things you can do to fix that, but yeah, like aesthetically, sometimes you're just kind of like embarrassed. You're like, I don't want people to see this.
How many come out as duds sound-wise, like inescapable problems?
Like really, like you can't fix it at all.
Yeah,
kind of
like you have to start over.
It depends on really like where you draw that line, I think. A lot of times all you have to do is, take it apart and thin things out a little bit or something like that. But sometimes, it doesn't even feel like it's worth that. Like sometimes I have like an old instrument that I made when I was a student, where I had to pick wood that we just had. Like we were almost out of wood, so this was the wood that I got. I couldn't actually pick out wood that I liked for it. And we had a guest instructor who was very insistent that I not carve it as far as I wanted to, even though it seemed like the right decision to me.
Okay.
And when I got it all put together, it actually looks okay, but it just doesn't sound that great, and I never liked it. And I could try and fix it. I'm sure I could just like regraduate it a little bit and make it better. But I don't know. I'm kind of just like, I don't even want to look at that anymore. It's not that great anyway. Maybe in 10 years when I get bored of projects or something, I'll take it out and fix it,
So when you do set out to make a violin, I was going to ask, like, when you have your best laid plan, and then I forgot what I was going to ask about that. So where were we? What was the last question I asked you? And then that'll...
you had asked me about whether... how many instruments actually end up being like just complete duds.
Yeah, and then
I think ultimately, like it's pretty unlikely unless you really like just accidentally carve like a big hole in it or something. Most of the time, it's salvageable. So pretty much none of them, unless you've just done something terrible.
How much of making a great violin is art versus science?
That is probably debatable. There are definitely people who are very much into the science of it. They have they have gear, that they set up so that they can like test vibrations and sound waves and, the speed of sound and things like that. There's a lot of stuff that you can do that's just tactile as well. And that's kind of more how I was taught. Is we pay attention to certain types of things, thicknesses and how things feel and how things are moving. And you've got to keep in mind, this sort of idea that you're working with like a moving machine kind of. And so you've got to think about when you're carving, does this need to be thinner here? And does this need to be thicker here so that this moves the way that I want it to? And you can be very scientific about that, but you can also kind of feel it out and just kind of envision it in your mind. It just depends on your mindset, I think.
And in the end, it's judged by how it sounds, not by how it vibrates and how the vibrations are measured.
Yeah, I suppose
it's a subjective experience, whether it's worth anything.
Yeah.
Or do people buy, if you're buying a really expensive violin, do you put it under some measurements to make sure that it is tonally correct?
I don't think most people would.
Okay.
I think, players are all kind of different, and I can imagine that there might be some player out there who, when they take something out on trial, they go home and they test the vibrations of something or other to make sure that it meets some criteria that they think is important because they read that somewhere, But for the most part, I think most musicians just pay attention to how it feels and how it sounds and the combination of those two things.
Are you severely limited by wood selection? Are there only certain grains or species that work?
Not too much. We generally use European tone wood, kind of like spruce and maple. And you don't really have to go that specific. You could get spruce and maple that are, from other regions, or different species. A lot of Chinese violins are made with a Chinese maple and Chinese spruce. But they do behave differently and they feel differently. So it's a little bit about your preference. There are also some things where you have to worry about what players are okay with. One of the tricky things about this industry is that when it comes to classical violinists anyway, there's a lot of tradition surrounding everything. So we end up having to sometimes conform more to tradition than we necessarily are inclined to, just because, you're like, no one's going to buy this if I make this out of this wood or something like that. Or if it looks like this, it's going to be too weird or hard to sell,
Are people collecting unique woods? So concert violinists, they have to play them. So I understand they have to conform to narrow specifications or they wouldn't be comfortable taking a gamble. But are there collectors who get funky? And is there an artisan class of lutherie professionals making one-offs?
I think that there are some people who just love experimenting and they do crazy stuff. They'll make things out of balsa wood or they'll do things in interesting shapes or all kinds of stuff. And it is kind of fun to sometimes just do something out of the box because, all we're doing is copying old instruments in a lot of ways. And so there's creativity within that, but it sometimes doesn't feel that creative because it's already just a copy of something sometimes. So it's kind of fun to try something a little different. And I think those people definitely exist. I've seen some things in competitions of, people who make really interesting things just to do something different. I think there are players who are more open to unconventional types of instruments, different shapes and things like that, as long as it sounds good to them, It's less common, but then the few people who do those things, those musicians who are interested in that will seek them out. So it kind of works out.
Would you rather make violins for students or for professionals?
I think it's tough to say. I don't really care actually either way. To me, the most important part is that it's found a good match, for me, I play violin a little bit, but I was actually a classical guitar player before. And there's nothing like finding an instrument that is perfect for the way that you play and, that makes all the right sounds in the right ways that you want. So, that's really all I ever go for is someday someone's going to find this and they're going to feel the same way about this violin as I felt about this guitar that I bought or whatever, So.
Beautiful. We'll take a break to play a little game as we always do
sure.
in the middle of the show. The game is called The Most Expensive Violin Ever Sold. And the stakes today are this VHS copy of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I think it's been on the show at least maybe 3 episodes. People have failed to win it. You may win it today because the game rules are as follows. You tell me the story of the most expensive violin ever sold. You win the movie.
Oh, gosh. I don't know if it's changed. And I am blanking on the name of it. I know like Anna Kiko Myers has a Del Jesu that is it the Vuittomps? That was, at least at the time, the most expensive violin.
I've heard like 100 million.
Yeah.
Is that the right ballpark for these things?
I think it might have been something like that. It was a lot.
Yeah. I was worried that if I did my own research, I'd find like faulty, because these are like a lot of private party sales, right? You wouldn't really ever know.
Yeah, they do advertise it. It might have been like 60 million. I can't remember exactly, but it was a lot. It was definitely tens of millions, if nothing else.
And then the journalist always asks, is there anything that could actually make a violin worth more than the floor price of, say, 100,000? Or is it just the rarity and the hype around these? Well, they're usually Stradivarius, right?
Yeah, well, there's Stradivarius and Del Jesu's are kind of the top 2 like well-known older Italian violins. And it's an interesting kind of an issue because you're also keeping in mind like historical significance of these. So it's almost like buying, like a Picasso or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, like those are nicely done paintings in themselves, but they're valued a lot more because they're rarer and they have like a historical significance as well. And so that's part of why these things are so expensive. And a lot of times that's why they're purchased by private donors who then like lend them indefinitely to nice musicians. So
interesting. Yeah, I remember Kurt Cobain shared the story that he asked David Geffen to buy him like a Les Paul guitar that was like $500,000, and David Geffen said no. So it doesn't always work out, which is crazy because he had probably made $500 million for David Geffen at the time.
Yeah.
Question for you: if someone gifted you $1 million classical guitar, would you play it?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You would. So if it was like, ancient Italian handicraft and rare, you would play it.
Yeah.
You'd enjoy it.
Yeah, well, you don't really get the opportunity to do that very much. So, you might as well do it while you can.
But as like a daily driver, you're washing your hands. You're trying not, I don't know, there's other precautions, but you would take it out every day, and would you practice on it and learn and grow?
That's a little bit of a tricky question. I mean, it depends on the instrument and how rare it is and things. There's a lot of debate around these old Italian instruments and things, whether they should be played or whether they should be preserved, because
you do have to pay some deference to history.
Yeah, it's kind of like, well, should we, not play this so that we can, not worry about banging it up and accidentally removing the varnish and things like that, or should we play it because it was made to be played, Well,
nowadays we can record it.
Yeah.
So we can record the joy of someone playing $1 million violin, and it'll forever be free for everyone on YouTube. What were you like in high school?
Oh gosh. I was, I don't know, probably kind of a brat.
Really?
Yeah.
So you've already answered how your enemies would criticize you.
I went to a private school.
Okay.
And it was a very small private school. I didn't go there because I was fancy or anything. My mom was just trying to put me somewhere where I would have good influences around me. And so I think when I started, it was the New Mexico Academy for Science and Mathematics, which no longer exists.
Yeah. I was gonna say.
And when I started in 7th grade, we had, I want to say we had like 30 something students or something. We only had 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And as time went on, I think we got up to like 100 something students when I graduated high school. But I was there from 7th grade through 12th grade, mostly with the same teachers and the same people. And we really kind of like learned how to work the system and
you were co-conspiring with your teachers?
Well,
to get off easy to pass like board like minimum state regulations?
No, not that kind of system, but more like, how we can, what teachers will let us get away with what, and, can we like get away with this kind of change in the uniform, if we are like we realize pretty quickly if we're getting good grades, we can get away with like messing with the dress code a lot more. So there's like weird little things like that.
Nice.
But over time, we had started at the school and we were ending at the school. So we were kind of like the example of like what the school could do for people. So we got very, I want to say full of ourselves, but we knew we could get away with some stuff because we were kind of like the golden children of the school.
You were told you were leaders constantly, so you started to believe it.
Yeah.
That's what like all the learning institutions, I think, do that. They cast you as a hero in your own story.
Yeah.
To represent their brand. It works though. What advice would you give that person, your 15-year-old self?
I think probably like if I could like talk to myself back then, it would have been, I think, important for me to know that, like now as a parent, I realize that like all you ever really want for your kids is for them to be happy. And sometimes it comes off to your kids as you wanting them to be different or something, like you feel like they're not accomplishing things, but it's not really like what the issue is. It's more that like your parents are trying to help you along so that you are a happier person ultimately.
More integrated. Like the extracurriculars aren't to get into college. They're to balance your life and expose you to new things and help you like realize what you do and don't like and things like that. I know when I was in high school, I felt a lot like I needed to be kind of like better than I was. Like I felt like I should be getting better grades and should be more impressive and all these things. And that was like kind of hard for me, especially because most of my friends were like very, very smart people, are very smart people. We're all still friends. Very smart people who are very good at all the things that they do. And so, I think it took me a long time. It took me until I was at North Bennett Street School, trying to do something purely for myself to realize that like, oh, this is just like all anybody ever wanted for me was to be doing something that I want to do so that I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And I think if I had known that at a younger age, I would have not had to like flounder so much. Wow. So trust your elders or respect their experience.
Yeah.
In like this broad sense, pay deference or have reverence.
Well, and to appreciate that, nobody's trying to force you into anything that you don't want to do. It's more that they just are trying to help you find your way, kind of, you know.
You think you had good parents and you misinterpreted it. I mean, that's an amazing thing. We don't normally hear that.
Yeah, to an extent, yeah, I think that's kind of what it is, It's hard being a parent, you don't, sometimes you say things and you're just like, oh, I should not have phrased things that way. And for me, luckily, my son is still very young. And so I'll do that and I'll be like, oh, I got to remember not to say that again, But, so you can't always control that. And sometimes you say things, I think, to your kids that you don't really mean in a certain way. So, I don't know.
Cool.
Yeah.
How did you take some time off in between high school in New Mexico and going to trade school in Boston?
I went to college right out of high school pretty much, to Carleton in Minnesota. And I majored in art there. And then I came back here and I spent a couple years just like not knowing what to do with myself. 'Cause art is, well, I graduated in 2008, so that was also like one of the worst years you could possibly graduate.
From college?
Yeah.
Oh, so we graduated the same year. How interesting.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there was like nothing, to do with an art. I mean, it's already hard enough with an art degree, and then and then like everything had crashed, and there were basically no good jobs anywhere. So, so I just kind of hung out here, and I worked at Trader Joe's for a long time, and then actually found out about violin making from a friend who had gone into that. So. And he was like, you should check out North Bennett Street School. It's really good. So, so I did.
Wow. I had this vision that it was like a conservatory that you were prepped to go to until since the age of 5. But it's a lucrative trade, or relatively so. Like, were you partially attracted to it because of the idea of income stability as an artist?
No, I think, that's how I convinced my dad to not give me a hard time about about taking out some more student loans and going to school for that. I was like, you can sell a violin for like $10,000. I just got to sell like 6 of these. It'll pay it all off. But
That's funny. They charge 6 violins for tuition.
Yeah. For me, I don't know. I just wanted to do something that I didn't hate doing. That was really like where I was in my life. Was I had been applying for jobs and I'd been working at places, and I had a really good sense at that point of what I did and didn't want to do with my career. And so when I learned about violin making, it just sounded like everything that I was looking for.
Yeah.
It was very like detail oriented. People care about whether you're doing a good job. It's impactful in its own way, but it's also kind of behind the scenes. And there's a lot of stuff about it that I really like. It's always different. Even if you're making the same instrument, it's different every single time.
How many violins have you made so far? Or instruments, include violas and anything else?
I haven't made a ton, unfortunately. I think I'm on number 14.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's more screenplays than I've written. I'm at 6.
Oh, well.
How long does it take to make a good violin, handcrafted?
It depends a little on the maker. For me, it's if I'm like really like nose to the grindstone, working every day, which almost never works out that way, especially now that I have a toddler. It takes about probably 2.5 months to get it all made and varnished and set up. But right now I'm probably doing about, I don't know, maybe 3 a year.
3 a year. Yeah. What's the max
what
you could if you were a sole proprietor of like a oversubscribed business? How many would you be making?
If I could just like work on it all the time.
Yeah, if you had overflowing orders at your Instagram, let's mention that. Shout it out for me. I'm pulling it up right now. Oh, it's Felix Violins. It's very catchy.
Oh, yeah. Thanks.
Felix Violins on Instagram. You can go check Julia's Instagram out and see photos of her working, videos of her working on violins. Quite beautiful. Do you get any commissions through there, or is that a hope of yours?
Yeah, eventually I'm hoping to get more commissions. It takes a little bit of time sometimes to get there because you kind of have to get your name out a little bit. So I've just started, I kind of had like a break in my career. Like I got out of school, I went and started a shop, which was a terrible mistake. It just ate up a lot of my time, and I was doing repairs to try and cover costs and things like that. And I basically just didn't do any making, which is part of why I haven't made a lot of things. So that was like 3 years or something of just not doing a lot of making work. And at this point, I'm kind of starting to get back on track, and I'm starting to get things back out into shops. And so hopefully as more of my instruments get sold, people start noticing them and coming to me more directly. And that is how it works a lot of the time. It just takes a while to get to that point, I think. Unless you happen to know people. Yeah, but
what, in your words, what separates your violins from other violin makers?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, there are a lot of really good violin makers out there. And I think one of the interesting things about handmade instruments is that they're all going to be inherently slightly different from each other, even among the same maker, you know. And there will be some consistency, just like when you're looking at an artist, you know, and you look at all their paintings, like, yeah, all their paintings are different, but you can still see it's by the same artist, you know? It's like that with violins, too. You can see people's styles and preferences in their work. So, you know, I have certain things that I kind of aim for tonally because I know what I like and what I think a violin should sound like. And I think everybody has those kinds of ideas in their mind when they're making a violin of what they're going for. It's just that everybody's got a slightly different idea. So sometimes instruments might sound really similar, but sometimes, you know, you might have two of like the same type of model, you know, from two different makers that just sound very different from each other because we were going for different things.
What is the tone you're shooting for?
I really like nice, like full tone, and not super bright, but clear, and a little bit of darkness, but not too much. It's hard to describe sound.
It's fun though. I mean, I just went on a wild ride. When you said darkness, I was like, oh, I want this violin.
Yeah. And you know, and playability is really important too. So it's good to be able to feel like you're able to play your instrument easily, and that's really important too. Because even if it sounds really nice, if it's hard to play, it doesn't matter. You know,
because your body, it's resting on your body.
Yeah,
so it's affecting the vibration.
Well, it's more about like how your hands are able to move on it and the responsiveness of the strings as you're playing and things like that. It's a really complex instrument, and there's a lot of stuff to think about. And violin playing itself is really difficult. I don't know if you've ever tried to play a violin.
In 4th grade, I tried, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever quite learned.
It's got to be one of the hardest instruments. I've played a lot of instruments, and it is definitely up there in terms of things that were difficult. I don't think I would have stuck with it if I weren't making them, but I knew I had to keep going. So
yeah, it's some of your authenticity or legitimacy. You have to be a player.
Yeah. I mean, you know, you don't necessarily have to be like really good. There are some violin makers who are very good at violin, but it is important to be able to play it enough that you can feel what the player's going to feel if they're doing certain things, and that you can get those certain tones out of it so that you know whether you need to adjust something or not.
What was the first big art project you presented to the world?
Oh.
Yeah, I've heard this life story, and I'm thinking, oh, wow, art school's in there. Didn't know that. So out of that whole span, what was the first thing you shared?
Gosh, I've done actually a lot of art in my life. I did art like all through high school, and I'm trying to think of like, I don't know, does the high school stuff count?
Yeah, I mean, did you have was there like a big showing where all the parents came in or something?
Okay. Well, if we're talking art shows, I think the first like actual art show thing I did was my junior show in college. which really was like, I did a lot of different things. It was very like installation based. I've always been kind of like a 3-dimensional art kind of a person. So even though there were a lot of drawings and things, I like put them all out in a certain way. And it took me a long time like to just arrange everything on the wall the way I wanted to. And I made some stuff out of pennies. I made some things out of copper also that were for the wall. So that was like my first real art show kind of thing, I guess. And my senior year, we had to do a senior art show that involved a much bigger installation of pennies.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you've been really jazzed throughout your life. I've been perceiving this, or you've said it explicitly, that the idea of violin and viola making weaved your unique interests and talents. So since embarking on this journey as a violin maker, what's been your biggest disappointment?
Oh. I think, well, are you talking about like within the work itself or in the industry?
Yeah, maybe
or?
Anything, all of the above, but maybe if you have one particularly where it didn't weave all your interests. Or, no, it can't literally be that, because that would be, it served you well. It sounds like it's serving you well, but overall, but yeah. When is a time that the craft or the schooling or the industry or the peers or the coworkers have not lived up to hopes? Yeah.
Gosh. I think with the actual making, I mean, you know, we had this kind of running joke for a while at North Bennett Street School. Their like motto was "Do what you love every day," and we thought that was hilarious because, you know, in anything, even if you love your work, there's always some aspect of it that you're not into doing, you know. And so that's always been kind of a running joke with us. But I think in terms of the actual work, ultimately, I'm pretty happy doing all the work that I need to do. It's really nice to, you know, get to the end of an instrument and just be like, it's done. I've put all this work into it and it's finally finished. I think the hardest part for me was getting out of school and realizing that I didn't know how to proceed. You know, we technically had a career advisor there, but that particular person was not terribly helpful. They don't work there anymore. And, you know, because I didn't want to work in a shop, I just wasn't sure what I should do with myself. And I ended up going out to Washington, and when I introduced myself to people, I ended up getting like a lot of kind of like mansplainy kind of things going on. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of like a smaller woman, and I got a lot of like, this is how the industry works, little lady kind of talks like everywhere I went. Mm-hmm. It wasn't everybody I encountered, but it was a lot of dealers and things like that who I hadn't really dealt with before. And so that was a little bit disappointing because I had felt like, even though it's a very male-dominated industry, that I hadn't really felt a lot of sexism really or anything like that from my peers. But when I got out and started working on my own and working with like dealers and people who I'm trying to sell to, even customers and stuff, you get a lot of different types of encounters that I wasn't expecting. And so that was a little hard to take in and to kind of like get over. I felt really disenchanted with the industry for a little bit. I wanted to keep making, but I just didn't want to deal with the people that you had to deal with to sell things. So that was part of why I started my own shop. I was like, maybe I can just sell things out of my own place.
Yeah, jump over the middleman.
Yeah.
Sounds clever. When you said violin dealer, like my heart sank just at that concept.
Yeah.
Like a mercenary in the middle of the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, some of them, there are some very nice dealers out there. But it's got a lot of stuff going on, especially when it comes to older instruments and things. It's easy for people to get a little taken in, I think, not even necessarily intentionally, but it happens by greed and like prestige and things like that, I don't know if they always realize that they're doing that. I definitely heard some stories directly from people about things that they had done that they thought were like accomplishments that just sounded like horrible things to me. So that was interesting. And yeah, so basically the reason that I started doing a lot of work in this Women in Luthery group that I'm in is because of that experience of getting out of school and realizing like I didn't know where to start and I didn't have any direction. And I've been trying to help people find that in that group. So
very nice. Yeah, I saw that come up on your Instagram a few times.
Yeah.
So Felix Violins on Instagram is a good place to connect with women in Luthery.
Yeah, there's actually a Women in Luthery Instagram too. And I think it's just at Women in Luthery. But there's a really good Facebook group for that too. So if there's anybody out there listening to this who makes instruments or has kind of been dabbling in it, they welcome a lot of people. But it's mostly just to help. It's mostly to have a safe space for women to be able to ask like kind of normal questions without having to worry about, being talked down to and stuff by a lot of these people. I think some of that's phasing out of the industry. I don't want people to think that like this, like all dealers are horrible or like all people are like super sexist and treat us terribly. There's definitely plenty of good people. But yeah, a lot of there's still a little bit of that going on, and it's good to kind of keep it in mind and know how to deal with it. So
follow Julia and Women in Luthery on Instagram. Since you embarked on this journey of making violins and violas, what's been the most pleasant surprise?
I think probably just like the friends that I've made. Violin makers, we all have kind of a lot of things in common. Not everybody's going to get along with everybody, but a lot of us have like the same kind of hang-ups and things like that. There's like a lot of imposter syndrome.
This is great.
In our industry. And it's nice to just like be able to like really easily connect with these people and know that we're all kind of like on the same page. We're all just like doing the best that we can and we try and support each other and help each other out when, if we don't know how to do something or if we're nervous about doing something like, oh, well, try this thing. I've made a lot of really good friends just at North Bennett Street School and since then. And yeah, it's been really nice.
That's great. I like to think about like the measure of whether you're like following your authentic path is you look up around you and like there's kindred souls. So that's really good. I think I sounds very validating that your peers have the same hang-ups as you.
Yeah.
So let's go to the clay pot, which is a collection of fan questions.
Okay.
Right before we pull our first, I'll say a special thanks to all our sticker partners. Thank you to our 8 sticker partners. Now I'll go in reverse order, give some extra shine to our new joiners. First up, Picnic New Mexico, cheese plates and grazing tables for parties, special occasions, and self-care. As seen in Edible New Mexico and the Santa Fe Reporter, the nutritious arrangements are works of art themselves. Those are my words. Go see at picnic_NM on Instagram. Thank you to the Rail Yard Conservancy. Volunteer any Tuesday or Thursday, 10 a.m. to noon. Outside, help the local nonprofit that manages one of the city's most interesting ecological outdoor spaces. Most ecologically interesting outdoor spaces. Get some vitamin D this winter. Visit railyardpark.org. Thank you to Sun Green Cleaners. Use code AWB10 for 10% off your first commercial or home cleaning. Ask for Noel, code AWB10, Sun Green Cleaner on Instagram. Thank you to Cry Like Donna, Santa Fe's premier tape label. Buy an indie cassette tape as a gift today. Shop crylikeDonna.bandcamp.com. Donna has 2 N's, Donna. Thank you to Wayward Comedy. You can perform or watch 8 to 9:30 p.m. every Wednesday in Santa Fe at Chili Line Brewery on Guadalupe. 8 to 9:30 p.m. Wednesdays, free at Wayward Comedy on Instagram. Thank you to Oasis Campervans, one of our first 3 sticker partners. Craftsmanship so good, most of their customers are out of state. Go check them out. Go check it out at Oasis Campervans on Instagram. Thank you to the Santa Fe Independent Film Club. Drop in any Saturday, 4 to 6 p.m. at Boxcar in the Rail Yard, open to the public. The group that makes films with its members. Santa Fe Human Rights Alliance, our very first ever sticker partner. Big thank you. Visit hrasantafe.org for a list of upcoming events. And back to the show. But I'm going to put that in later. Because I'm not going to make you... I have like 8 now. So I'm not going to make you sit through that. First fan question. What size bed do you sleep in?
Oh, that's interesting.
It is. We can skip it if you want. You can say next.
I mean, I guess, just real quickly, it's a full-size bed.
Okay. Second fan question. Favorite president? They only get harder.
Oh, gosh. That is hard. I don't know. I guess Obama. He seemed like a good dude.
Is it okay if I criticize that as a safe answer or easy answer?
Well, I mean, I was very young for a lot of these presidents. I don't feel like I have like a valid opinion on most of them.
Yeah, and you're not comfortable going into history. Okay. I'll turn for the better. Have you ever spotted George R.R. Martin in town?
I haven't actually, or if I did, I really didn't notice, but I don't think I have. We moved back a couple years ago, like right before the pandemic started. So, I was only here for like 2 months and then was just indoors for like a year and a half. So
Yeah,
I haven't had enough chances yet. I
thought I was staring at him for about an hour at dinner once.
Oh, really?
And then I found out that it was a lookalike. What podcast are you listening to right now?
Oh. I listen to this and I listen to 99% Invisible sometimes.
Love it.
And I also actually probably mostly listen, this may be embarrassing, I listen to this one called My Dad Wrote a Porno.
Huh. I mean, I love the title. What's like the one sentence pitch?
Yeah. It's this guy whose dad wrote this really terrible erotic novel, and it actually becomes like a series of novels, and they just read one chapter every episode. It's him and a couple of his friends. And
wow. So it's him processing mostly that he has a strange father.
I think he's desperately trying to block out the the fact that this is his dad. You can tell in the first season he's having a lot of trouble, but by the third season he's getting better.
Yeah, there are layers to that. Wow, that is like it's public torture, like self-imposed public torture.
Yeah.
There's some voyeurism to it, some schadenfreude.
The actual story is just so bad. I like things that are just bad, like bad movies and bad stories.
How does the son take it? Is it put on? Like, is he enjoying it, stressed?
I think, like I said, I think he's trying to pretend that it's not his dad as much as he can. Sometimes you can tell that he's getting really grossed out.
But it's his concept, right? The son decided to produce this podcast?
Yeah.
Interesting. What's it called again?
It's called My Dad Wrote a Porno.
My Dad Wrote a Porno. I'm going to check that out.
There are
That's kind of
6
cool.
seasons of it.
We have one more fan question for you.
Okay.
Very last.
All
Have
right.
you ever been to jail?
To jail? I have not. I'm kind of like a straight edge kind of goody two shoes kind of a person. Unfortunately, I don't really have very interesting past.
That works for me. I've never been to jail.
Yeah, I think it would take a lot to get me into jail. People are usually kind of nice to me.
Oh, I see. You think even if you've done something wrong, they'll be like, we'll let you off with a warning.
Yeah, it's the Felix luck, you know.
The Felix luck.
It skips a generation, but I am not that generation.
Last question before we go. If you could change one thing about this podcast, what would it be?
Oh. I don't know. I like this podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can't really think of anything. It's just kind of fun to answer all these weird questions that you're not really expecting. And you seem to come up with stuff on the fly too, which is good.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, go to Felix Violins right now, Felix Violins on Instagram. What are they going to see there, Julia? Pump it up.
Oh, I try my best to post actual things of me working as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
People are liking the videos a lot of the time, so I've been trying to post more videos, but yeah, I try to post nice pictures of my work and what I'm working on. I try not to over romanticize things if I can help it.
Mm-hmm. Are you ever posting things that go wrong? Maybe a little struggle, a little act 2 problems.
I do post about things that go wrong more privately. I try not to do that on Instagram. Just maybe I should. I don't know.
What is your professional face to the world? So I'd understand.
Yeah, like I don't want people to think I'm just like bumbling around in my workshop or something. I don't make big mistakes very often. It is a struggle actually sometimes to post things that I know no one else is going to notice, that it's not the way I wanted it to be, and but I don't want to post it because I know that I don't like it. I definitely have a lot of drafts in my Instagram that are things that I almost posted and then just didn't.
Wow. I love your Instagram.
Oh,
I hope everyone listening checks it out. Thank you so much for coming and agreeing to do this. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. You're listening to Artist with Brian. I'm Brian here with
Jeff Gonzalez.
Jeff is a filmmaker, sound editor, music producer. I dig it, man. I say we try it for season 3. Do you want it at the beginning and the end?
Yeah, I think it'll sound great.
I say I thank you every episode at the end. Like, I'll shout out your Instagram handle for your music if you have one.
To cater to your taste.